I represent obviously small businesses, and I also represent employees. And as a small business owner myself, I know that if I get sued for something that I am comfortable with in the sense that I've taken care of, but I also see a lot of my clients that come in and they're just being slammed because they're some of the basics. Nobody ever told them about the basics. And when I ask my client, do you have a handbook? And there's a blank look. And I'm like,
the big white that's there.
Like you mentioned, a lot of them also do tend to, it's important for us to talk about the fact that small businesses, right? I hire my family members. And generally it's when you hire a non-family member, when things kind of tend to go awry. It does happen with family members too, especially if they're being really egregious in paying them. But in general, when you have 4 or 5 family members and suddenly you have a non-family member come in and you know, that's when things can go, I think, sideways.
You bring up an employee handbook. Do you think that every, even mom and pop shops, when it's not a family member, they have employees outside of their family? Should they always have?
Or even more important, because especially when you have a family-owned business, everyone thinks that, oh, we're all friends here. We're all family. We're all friends. We all love each other. And everyone loves each other until they don't. We're all friends until they're not, right? But your handbook, I always tell clients, your handbook is not something to beat yourself over the head with. Your handbook is kind of telling your employees what is important to your company, right? This is what you value. One of the values that should be in your handbook is that you value equality, meaning that you're treating all employees the same, whether it's a family member or not. For example, if your son works at the company and they're always coming in late, but then you have your employee who comes in late and you're writing them up, these employees are seeing that disparity, right? They're seeing that they're not being treated equally. Right. So that should be in your handbook. And then you have to make sure you're holding yourself accountable to what's in your handbook. So yes, I would say, Jennifer, it's important.
So do you have general things that you're like, these are always in the handbook, and then you build on from there?
Oh, for sure. I mean, any policy needs to have time and attendance. It needs to have holiday pay. I needs to talk about calling out, absences, and more than important than anything else, the Family Medical Leave Act and the ADA, they need to be in there because there's so many leaves that are allowed by the state of California. And if an employee doesn't know, right, ultimately they need to know. And the most common one that comes up is usually taking care of a family member that's not doing well, considering the pandemic. That makes sense, right? The new coronavirus act, there's a new paid family leave act that allows a maximum up to 80 hours of paid sick leave. That's required for almost all employers under 500. And so a lot of employers aren't aware of that. So employees need to know what they can and cannot do, or pregnancy, or, disability, and you're sick yourself. Those are things that need to be included in every handbook.
So that's important, right? You have to have the boilerplate, but then you also need to make sure that handbook is tailored to your business. Right. There's certain policies that maybe you want to have the policies a certain way. It's going to be a conversation. You're going to tell your HR person, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And your HR person is going to tell you, well, maybe you can't do it that way, but this is the way you can do it so that you're going to achieve the same result, yet keep it inside a legal framework, right? For instance, you can't ask someone if they have a car if you're interviewing them.
Right.
But you can't ask them that question. But you could ask them if they have reliable transportation to and from work or to work, right? That you can ask. That's reasonable. You can't ask if they have a driver's license if a driver's license is not applicable to what they do. But if it is applicable, then you can ask. Right? So these are cases where your handbook has to be custom built to your needs, not just downloaded off the internet and you just say this works.
And unfortunately, that's the thing, the Google effect, right? People don't understand, and they're like, I'm just going to download. Why do I need to pay for a handbook? And handbook's not even that expensive in the scheme of things. I know that a lot of payroll companies always mention it, but I think I wish they would do a better job marketing why it's such a gift that they're giving to their small business clients, because it's 60 pages that are relevant to your company, because you don't want to just cut and paste and copy and paste. And inevitably, I always also look at the fact that if there's a typo or something, and I'm like, the wrong person.
Yeah, and then now you have a handbook. That's awesome. That's beautiful. That's great. Now, what are you doing with it? Is it sitting on a desk somewhere? Are you publishing it to your employees? How do you know that your employees read it? Are you documenting that? Well, these are all things that we as a payroll service do for you, right? We're going to make sure your employees have your handbook, that they acknowledge that they received it, and they acknowledge that they read it. And we're going to keep a copy of those records for you. That way, if it ever comes up, you're going to have proof that they said that they did read it. You don't have to hunt around in different paperwork, different filing cabinets. It'll be available for you at a moment's notice. W-4s, I-9s, any updates on your handbook or any updates on the law that they need to be published to them. We can provide that all to them and keep a record of it.
Well, go ahead, Jennifer.
I was just going to say, I don't, in my professional capacity, I don't deal with business owners typically. But in casual conversation, I have heard the comment from small business owners, gosh, I don't know if I want to have a handbook because then I'm going to be held to something. And that raises red flags to me. Again, it's not my area of law, but I think it's probably better. It will help them.
Because they are being held to it. Whether they acknowledge it or not, maybe if they're aware of it or not, they're being held to it now or by the court system. It's up to them.
Right, and I think
it's going to be a lawyer or it's going to be an agency that drops in on them and says, hey, let me see your I-9s. They're not going to have them. They're not going to have them organized. And all of a sudden, they're going to do a fishing expedition because they're going to give them a file with W-4s, I-9s, and all kinds of other stuff. And then they're going to be like, jackpot. This is going to be a money pit for us.
Kind of like a whole mess of, a whole mess of, if you don't have workers' comp insurance, it leads to a whole, owing more money than you would have if you just took care of business.